I'm good. Saw enough of those over the weekend. Or did we? How are you feeling about it? What's going on? Heck of a weekend for the pro wrestling world. As you expected, we're going to start with the end of SmackDown Fox collaboration. What? No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. They're done. We'll get to that. That's during the week more. We'll get to that. We got to talk about AEW All Out 2024. We got to get into everything that went down on that show. The outrage on social media is unbelievable. Can you believe that an unsanctioned match had things that went to that level? Why did these feuds that had so much built into them peak at the pay-per-view? Why? Why did they push the limit with Daniel Garcia and MJF trying to take each other out? Oh, Willow and Stat have been feuding for 6-7 months. They should have scaled it back a little bit in a Chicago street fight. The main event, coming off of a house burning down, coming off of a home invasion, stalking that's been going on for a year. Why did they go to such lengths? Wait, were they trying to tell a story there a few times? Is that what happened? Did they try to wrap up stories in big ways? Did they call back to things? No. Was wrestling violent on Saturday night? What? Can you believe that? Can you believe that a match that the company didn't sanction went to those lengths? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. None of that. And believe me, I have called out multiple wrestling companies for being violent or over the top for the sake of it. That can be done too much. 100% that can be done too much. But when you do it to peak storylines, when you do it on pay-per-view, not broadcast, not cable, when you do it there, you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because that's where the stories are going. I am baffled. And I just saw someone say, it's not worth discussing this on X or Twitter or whatever, because forget the discourse. You're not going to have nuanced conversation with people. And you're not. It's why I don't post a lot of big opinions on social media. I'd rather just do it here because I actually can keep talking past 250 characters, whatever the hell the number is now. As opposed to just, let me just take that tweet and post it. And stuff will get grabbed from this show. I've talked about that. A headline, usually something that is perceived as negative, will get grabbed from the show and posted, and that's what happens. That's the world we live in. I understand that. But I know I have a chance to at least elaborate and go back and forth with you guys in the chat about what you liked or didn't like. And that's fine. I'm not saying, and by the way, I'm not saying you had to like Saturday's show. I'm not saying you had to like All Out. I get it if people were turned off by it. I get that. But in the context, which is so friggin' important, the context of multiple feuds, what happened was understandable. What happened was being built to. It happened to be that multiple feuds got to that level at the same time. So you got a lot of, whoa, what was that? Multiple matches. It was very hard to continue to raise the intensity level. And I think that show did that. It's not easy to do that. And I want to talk about the match structure and the card structure because the way it was laid out worked. I got one thing that I didn't love where it happened, but it built and built and built. When you look at the card and look at what AEW did, you knew Hangman and Swerve was going to main event. You knew they were going to go to crazy lengths, and they did. You have a street fight in there with Willow and Chris. They took it further than I would have expected. You had Osprey and Pack early in the show. Have an unreal, no gimmicks, no stip match. Just an outstanding wrestling match. You open the show with MJF and Garcia, who have a real personal rivalry. Nowhere near the level of Swerve and Hangman, and nor should anything be at that level. And I'll get to that too. How often you could do this stuff. But I want wrestling to be gritty. I want it to be low down and dirty sometimes. I happen to think that wrestling as a whole, and I get this might be an advertiser thing, it might be about presentation, it might be about who owns company. I think wrestling can get too glossy at times. Can look too pretty. I said that about WrestleMania. Now, I'm not going to deny the money that was raked in by WWE. That is what they should be doing. But everything looks so pretty. Like, I didn't feel like at times there was the peak anger. It felt like how would you put it? Like it felt like not a fashion show. That's not the right way to say it. But everything was like so perfect and so much pomp and circumstance, which I get it. It's WrestleMania. It absolutely should be that way. You should have that level. It should feel huge. But I actually think that sometimes that pomp and circumstance takes away from the heat of a feud. Because it's about the entrance, and it's about the music, and it's about the new outfits, and it's about how it's shown on television. Like, I think that can take you out of the heat of a rivalry sometimes, which if you think about it, it's WrestleMania. And listen, in the past, this is why rematches are good. You think about years of backlash and how matches went to another level and they would add stips, or Extreme Rules used to be after WrestleMania. And I got that. You don't want to load up WrestleMania with all these crazy stip matches. You have, Mick Foley and Edge that was put on there to have a WrestleMania moment. That was to get Edge back to where he needed to be. And for Mick to have that moment and do the flaming table and do the Socko with the barbed wire. The presentation WWE is going to put on right now, I said this when I was there. I will continue to say this. They are putting on blockbuster movies. That's what they're doing. Those blockbuster movies make a bunch of money. They draw a lot of eyeballs. There's stars all over them. That's what they are. Fast and the Furious are blockbuster, flying cars, launching cars, The Rock, Vin Diesel, John Cena. It's all that stuff, and that makes a lot of money. There is no doubting that business model. There is no doubting the fact that they're now drawing more in because of that business model, which works for them and is working at an unbelievable level. They have never made more money. I am not doubting that whatsoever. What they are putting on is working. At the same time, it's a very fancy, pretty presentation. It's not as gritty. I like that the Tron, I like that the sets have been kind of brought down a little bit. I love that long set they walk through. I don't love all the LED lights and all that stuff like that. At the same time, it's what's working for them. They want to put on that big, loud, extravagant wrestling production. And that works. That's what's working for them. You don't doubt that. What I saw on Saturday, and I think what AEW has kind of gotten back to doing in the last 4 or 5 months, is being different in a good way. Because there were similarities to bad wrestling or bad WWE creative. There were things that popped up, you're like, ugh, please don't do that. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of Dynamite, which, by the way, was also the first day that the bump debuted. And we are going to get into that and what my day was like. I've talked about it a little bit on the show. I just passed the 5 years since I was hired at WWE. We're going to get into that in the coming weeks. Some bonus content if you become a Matt member at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Take a look down there. You can join. We got a lot of bonus content coming your way. My onboarding there, NXT to going to USA with the Dynamite debut, how that was perceived within the company. That is all coming your way within this month for some bonus content if you're a member at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. So certainly check that out. Really would appreciate that. And when AEW got going at the beginning, it was different in a different way. Look, you can point out production issues. I'm not saying that's a good thing. When that kind of stuff happens, especially when they bring it up on commentary, it drives me nuts. Like, you just push through it. But I like the idea of wrestling being a little grittier. And guess what? That's my opinion. I understand that's not for everybody. I understand that if you're playing to a large fan base, when you're doing all those things, that you can't go as hardcore. We talked about Blood last week. Go back, watch it. WrestlingMatchShow.com. And I think how Blood, good comment there from Dennis. We'll get to that in a second. I think Blood can be used accordingly. I think WWE has done that so far. They've done it with The Rock and Cody. They've done it a few times with Punk and Drew McIntyre. And they've pretty much limited it to that. They need Seth Rollins to have internal bleeding to sell Bronson Reed. There's reasons for all of it, and I agree with all of it. And I think it can be used in the right way. AEW's done it more. I brought up the thought that Jon Moxley had said, because he was asked about how much he bled and stuff. And he said, listen, if you're in a fight, you're going to bleed. And I think there's something to that. I think there's some understanding. At the same time, it's also wrestling, so there's creative license. If everybody's throwing punches, yeah, there should be a lot more bleeding and bruising. It doesn't always happen because they don't always have to hurt. That is pro wrestling. It's not all supposed to hurt. But to peak at a pay-per-view, but to peak when feuds are at the level that they're way up here, then you go to those lengths. I would assume the discourse would have been the same if it was just what we saw from Swerve and Hangman. I assume we'd be, people who are clutching their pearls or angry or saying it was too much or whatever it might be. Everything they did was enough to probably garner those reactions. You throw Moxley with the bag on Danielson on top of it, sure, it's a bit more. If you didn't like that stuff, that's fine. But I will say it fit mostly the Hangman Swerve stuff. I'll talk about the bag stuff because I have some thoughts on that. But the Hangman Swerve stuff was because it peaked the feud, because it was unsanctioned, because of everything they had done to each other over the last year. Nothing has been that personal in wrestling for quite some time. I don't know if it's the same people. I'm sure it is because it's Twitter and people just can throw opinions out and not have to call, answer for them. I do. If you're a public persona, you're doing a show like this, you have to answer for when you say stuff and get yelled at on Twitter or get agreed with, whatever it might be. But How many people were like, got to get back to the Attitude Era? I missed that stuff when they were cursing and sex and this and this and this. They did far worse, like, actual stuff in terms of, like, words that they used and racism and homophobia and degrading women just because, like, that was done back then. And people are like, bring all that. I liked when it was edgier. Not to say they're calling for all that kind of stuff, but, like, there's a lot of crap in there. There's a lot. It gets overlooked because Stone Cold was kicking ass. A lot of the main event stuff carried everything. There's a lot of crap underneath it. A lot. So to have that stuff back, just to have it, and you could definitely make the argument that at times AEW has done some violent stuff at the wrong times, not when a feud is peaking. That's fine. That is totally fine. You're justified in saying that. But if you just look at the weekend and you just look at where those feuds were getting to, I think a lot of the stuff makes sense. So let's get into, and I want to kind of take you through the card. I want to take you through, like, how this all built as the night went because of, like, where the show started and all that, right? We'll skip the pre-show. So MJF beats Garcia in 23 minutes and 40 seconds. Very good match. They don't like each other. Pretty simple as that. Pretty simple, right? They just don't like each other. MJF dropped Garcia on his neck. Garcia came back a couple weeks ago, cost MJF personal at a level of what? You want to say 6, 7, maybe 8? Because I think we're beyond 10 for what Swerve and Hangman did. But I'd put it at a 7.5 in terms of just feud level. And they have a very good match. And pile drivers, all that stuff. There's the handshake. Garcia's a step ahead. He gets to drop MJF on his head. So he loses the match. MJF doesn't lose twice in 3 weeks. Garcia gets to say, hey, I took him out. MJF will have a talking point. I assume he's going to sell. There's talk of him taking time off. Which, by the way, you see this right here? I want this sold for weeks. I have had a major issue, and I think it's a Vince thing. So hopefully this kind of stuff is gone. I want people to sell injuries for weeks. If you're going to do some kind of big beatdown, make it mean something. Make a beatdown have a lasting effect. Not just, here's the injury report and the person's back in a week. I hated that Cody was back a week after he took the Styles Clash on the floor from AJ. Hated it. At the same time, there's business, right? Well, people paid to see Cody Rhodes next week. So put him in a dark match. So have him appear in front of the live crowd. I think major beatdowns could be sold longer. And if MJF, if they did that at the end of the match, and he's going to be out for, let's just say even 2 weeks. I'll take that as a minimum. Just 2 weeks. At least it is selling what happened. Selling in general is not just about what happens in the matches. It's what happens verbally, how you talk about things, how you react to things, how it sticks with you, how you're not there. So Garcia can say, hey, he's not here tonight. You don't have to listen to him because I did that. I put him down. Franklin just brought up Rhea's knee. Yeah, she was on crutches last week. At least give me an update on that. Whatever. Yes, the leg, whatever. Sure, that stuff should be sold. That should be a weakness point. Will Ospreay's neck was a problem going into the match. Pac took it out 2 different times. Will battled through it. Probably would love to have seen him sell a little bit more in the interview with Renee later on when he set up the stuff with Ricochet. Absolutely. MJF got taken out. What they did because of the victory got Garcia some much-needed heat back because he doesn't win these matches enough. And unfortunately, it doesn't lead to much. This actually led to something. That works. I don't have a lot to say about the tag match other than I thought this is going to be a moot point, though. I think Claudio and Wheeler are a great team. I know they have a tag-ish finisher with the kick on the swing. But they're a very good, like, singles guy put together team. They kind of have like there's an all Japan feeling to that, if you guys know that kind of stuff. The tag was kind of, like, they kind of worked that way. But I didn't think they were going to win. I've talked about tag team wrestling not being in a great spot across the board. It still doesn't feel like it is. Obviously, you throw that match on late, and I'm okay with it because I think it was a backdrop to what came later with the BCC. Who beats the Bucks, by the way? Let me jump on the bandwagon that a few people, including our friend Tom Green, has brought up. I am 100% on board for the Outrunners upsetting the Young Bucks. 100%. The T-Pro just said it. I am on board. There is a great way to tell that story where they go, oh, we have to defend the tag titles tonight. We'll they've completely overlooked those guys. Like they make a point to say it's enhancement talent, whatever. And then they beat them. And the Bucks are shocked. And I'm not saying that's to be a long title reign. But it would get a pop. And by the way, if you believe the reports that are out there, and Swerve even acknowledged it, the Outrunners are outselling a lot of people in that company, T-shirt-wise, because they have some great merch. Sometimes great merch just goes a long way. There are some main event people in multiple companies that have some garbage-ass merchandise with some bad designs. Just because you put a bunch of stuff out doesn't mean it's good. Those guys have absolutely made the most of their opportunity. They're fun. They make you kind of sit up a little bit and go, what the hell are they saying? They don't take any opportunity for granted. And they've gotten over. There is a fun to those guys that, you know what, is different than a lot of the stuff we saw on Saturday night. It is different. It's not as serious. They take themselves seriously. That's the whole thing. In their heads, everything they're doing is serious. Everything they're doing is right. They're the youngest guys out there, all that stuff. Because they take themselves seriously, it's more fun to watch them. They're not playing it. They're not being funny to be funny. They are. They are funny, but that's who they are. They take themselves so seriously. Like, would you even question this? Of course we're the youngest guys. Of course we're jacked. Of course, biggest biceps, all that stuff. That's what's making you're in on it. If they beat the Young Bucks, I can already hear Tony Schiavone's call of that, how excited he would be. There is something to that. Osprey and Pack had a 20-minute match. They beat the hell out of each other. They did everything that those guys can do well. And Osprey needed to get the win. He needed it. It's not going to hurt Pac really that much. Whatever. Osprey continues on. He had just beat MJF. These guys lit it up. They delivered exactly like I thought they did. From a strictly No BS, no stips, none of that. In-ring match, killed it. And I assume we're going towards Osprey and Ricochet. Ricochet is still talking like Ricochet, as we saw. So they'll do their stuff in the ring. Now, as soon as that match was over, I said, good luck following that. And a very interesting match structure. MJF opens the show. Then you go to the tag. Osprey Pack is the third match. Interesting. So you send Chris and Willow out there to follow that. And it would have been very hard to admit or to predict that they would, because they did such a different match than what we had just saw. Because the feud had been built for so long. They went out there motivated to prove a point. They went out there to deliver an end of feud match. And they did. And they did a lot. And they've both been in street fights, and they both came up together. And they know each other well. And they deliver. That split on the thumbtacks was such a great use of Chris's athleticism and the kind of stuff she does in the ring to work the thumbtacks in to her moveset was so good. It was so natural. God, how many... There's too often when you can see people going like, you can see the wheels turning. It happens on Tuesday nights because it's developmental. Because they're still learning. But you can see that we have to get to here. I'm supposed to go here. Oh, wait, we have to hit the spot here. And that happens. It happens in wrestling across the board. But everything they did, for the most part, a couple of slow spots here and there. You know what? In a street fight, I don't really care about that. I want it to be sloppy sometimes. I want it to look like a fight. They had a fight. They had a fight, and they used stuff where they should have used it, and Willow had to go to another level, as happy as she is. Her holding up the light tubes with that picture for the... Like, that's a cool picture. That's a cool image. People popped for that. What it reminded me of was the level that Bayley wasn't allowed to go to. Obviously capable of it, but I go back to that kendo stick match with Alexa Bliss, and she wouldn't pull the trigger. She wouldn't go up there. She looked like a goof. Not her fault. How it was agented, how it was booked, how it was produced, whatever you want to say. Willow has had that happy-go-lucky smile, all that, but she's done these street fights before, but she goes to light tubes. Why? Because Chris did all the terrible stuff to her. And it was one spot, and that was it. And Chris bled, and that was fine. And they did the chain at the end. I was a little surprised at the finish, I got to tell you. To have as clean of a finish as they had, with the heel going over in that way, was a bit surprising. And I wonder where Chris goes from here, because she just won a feud of two of the very best AEW has. And where does that lead Chris? Because Mercedes is a heel champ. And Mariah is a heel champ. So I just wonder where it leaves Chris. That's why I thought Willow would win the feud, because it would set her up for very likely Mariah. But they did something that was not easy to do. They followed two of the very in-ring best in the world. And they did it in a completely different way, and I think that's why it worked. So kudos to them. Absolutely. They deserve all the praise for that. I hope there is stuff for both of them. I think they had a match that blew off the feud in the best way possible. That's all you can ask for. Really, really good. Which we continue on. So what do they do after that? They go to the four-way. Star-studded, right? Okada, Briscoe, Orange, Takeshita. And Okada wins. They kept the Okada, Takeshita stuff, I don't want to say to a minimum. I would have liked a little less between Okada and Takeshita, but I think right away when they cleared Orange out and they cleared Briscoe out, they gave that moment. They let them stand and people came up for it, and that's all you want to see. I think that's what you wanted to test that out. You wanted to feel what that was going to feel like. And then Orange got involved, and they had their face-off. But for the most part, I think, even though it was a four-way, it was good to see Okada back doing his thing. I loved his casual walkover to do the kick to break up the pin. That was good. But you got four guys who can work their asses off. Takeshita just jumps off the page. Absolutely jumps off the page. And, you know, I have said I would like him away from Okada. That would be my pitch is Eddie Kingston gives him a talk. And I think I've said that with somebody else, but that was the original time I said that. Eddie Kingston just kind of goes, hey, you don't need that guy. I was in the G1. I know how brutal it is. Look what you did this year. Was Don out there over with you? Hell no, he wasn't. You did that. You went into a company that you don't work for, and you nearly won the thing by yourself. You don't need that guy. Kyle Fletcher doesn't need Don Callis. And I'm not saying Callis gets wiped off the map. I'm not saying that. But Takeshita by himself could be a massive star for that company. He jumps off the page. He has since he's shown up in the company. There's a lot to him. And people are bringing up the C2, which I guess we're coming up on somewhat soon. That's Takeshita's. It should be his to lose. You want to throw Garcia in there, I get it. But I think Takeshita is a top-tier level main eventer. Then we go to the TBS match with Mercedes and Shida. I will say, and I it was good. It wasn't great. I sensed more urgency and intensity from Mercedes. I did. It felt like she was going out there trying to wipe away All In. Shida's great. She's the ace. Mercedes beats the ace. I would have to say that I thought they jumped the gun on banning Camille in her second pay-per-view match. Like, sure, she's a heater. Sure, she's been getting involved. But the second match, the second pay-per-view match, she gets banned. It felt a little quick. It was fine. Mercedes is, I don't know, because I don't want to rip her apart, because I thought the stuff with, like, her first match back from injury with Willow was excellent. I don't think she's slow. But I don't know. It's not all there. It's not all there. All right. Moving into Danielson and Jack Perry. They go 27 and a half minutes. Very good match. I thought they told the story. And yes, T-Pro, good call. Monet and Stephanie Vecker was also a very good match. Go ahead. You can go back to Danielson and Jack now. Only had a couple weeks to build this. I have warmed up a hell of a lot more to Jack Perry in terms of his delivery, in terms of his character presentation. I think you need that when you're a guy that size. I think you have to come across bigger. I think you have to come across dangerous. He's not going to sprout up a few inches. It's not going to happen. But you have to, the beard, the look, the grittiness of him, the willingness to fight. You know, he's not a chicken shit in that way. He's not at all. So there is a grit to him that he needs. And he's a hell of a worker. Like, that's always been the thing. You go back to the PWG days. It's why he was attracting people's interests. But now he's added more to it. You know, the bust, the scapegoat thing, the posing. There's elements to him now. It's character building. It's not unbelievable. It's not like, oh my God, look at all that. But and it's not, it doesn't have to be. It's step by step. Double here. CC said Jack Perry moving into a Raven style character definitely helped. His heel persona before then, Punk stuff wasn't working. Yeah, I guess that's fair to say. Like, I'd rather him have an edge to him, be dangerous, be willing to go places. It's a good, like I said, it's a good foil to Darby. There's a lot of yin and yang to that. And that's going to add to when you face him. Oh, you might go through some stuff here. He's gonna do whatever he has to do. There's some danger to that. So look, was Bryan Danielson going to lose 2 weeks after he had, you know, the most memorable win of his career since WrestleMania 30? No. But as we would find out, it wasn't about that. It was far from that. It was a good back and forth. They made Perry look good. He's still the TNT champion. But it's Bryan Danielson. And Danielson had to fight through stuff. And Danielson had to come back after 2 weeks. And that was the story I would have played up a little bit more. Is Danielson just went through the mental time of his life. The physical time of his life in front of his family. Jack Perry won a coffin match in 10 minutes and had help doing so, kind of. He didn't go through as much as Danielson did. He's been on the offensive. Danielson, that's the story I think you got to keep playing with Danielson is his body's taped together right now. He said he needs neck surgery. Anybody who goes against him, while I wasn't believing that Jack Perry was going to beat Bryan Danielson and end his career, you have to keep playing that up. You have to push that Danielson is pushing through neck stuff. He's pushing through, 20 plus years of putting his body, what he's put his body through. I don't think they hit the retirement stuff enough until the pay-per-view, admittedly. Excalibur did a good job going, hey, if he loses, that's it. I don't think they hit that point home enough leading into the pay-per-view. They did on the show. And then, of course, where do we go? I had said last week, hey, there's some disconnect here with Moxley and the BCC. It hasn't been discussed. Why not? Why wasn't he at All Out, All In? Why was that not addressed? So the BCC steps to the elite. And Pac's out there. So you get the trios champs. They're all there backing them up. And then the attack. And not the attack on Yuta. Just held them back. Cesaro. Only because I just read it. Claudio. With that big uppercut. To me, that's the bigger shock. Not Moxley. That's the bigger shock. Because it's not him. He's turned heel in the past where he's been a heel or what. Sure. He's been positioned that way. But to basically put him in a position where he let that happen. He let that bag get put over Bryan Danielson's face. Moxley, is out there. Like, the visual is wild. Who did it? Probably on the short list, right? Hey, who's going to use a bag over somebody's head in AEW? Moxley. I know Eddie pitched it. I saw the Instagram post. Who did it wasn't surprising. What I thought, and my nitpick with this, on a night where you're going way out of bounds with Swerve and Hangman, in a good way, the correct way, you fast forwarded right to Moxley putting a bag over Bryan Danielson's face. Like, the turn was that. The turn was the uppercut, and the turn was that. Not a beatdown, not leading to something down the road, and then they do. No, you went right to that, which has a shock factor to it, because all of a sudden, and I'll say the quiet part out loud, the BCC just got interesting again, because that tweener stuff was very much like, hey, I like these guys, but what are they doing? Here's a bunch of guys that I like, that I know. Now they put Yuta with them. They go heel, they go face, they go heel, they go face. Sometimes people tag with them. It was a group that was put together, obviously, with Regal and all that stuff. And, all right, let's make Yuta a little bit more. And I think they've done a good job. Maybe not a great job with Yuta, but a good job. But they weren't super interesting. They were just guys that we, have seen on our TVs for 15, 20 years that all fight together, and they're good at it, and they want to fight. Okay, it's a fight club. But there wasn't a lot of nuance to it. There wasn't a lot of depth to it. It was just guys who had similar minds. Claudio Castagnoli, as I watched him in the tag match, he's one of those guys that I'm going to miss when he's done, because he's so good. He is so just crisp and everything you want from an in-ring worker. But I don't think he's ever been given the chance to go on. I know there's stuff before WWE, but WWE and AEW, I don't think he's ever had a chance to have this kind of now depth to him. And maybe because of that, that uppercut meant so much more. Because he's always been a guy that people like. Always. Whether he was a babyface or a heel, it was always, they got to push Cesaro. Oh, they got to push Claudio. They got to make him the guy. They got to go with him more. Because he was so good in the ring. But I don't think he was ever allowed to really have a lot of character depth. I don't think he was ever pushed that way. You go look back, and by the way, he has cut some really good promos on their social media or after matches. Like, there's a lot, and I saw people post them. There's callbacks. There's him getting pissed off when Danielson joined Team AEW to side with Eddie Kingston. There are crumbs that were left. He walked in that night with a white t-shirt on, just like Moxley did. He was with them all along. Claudio being as good as he is, and now having what you assume is a much darker character, personality, that's different for him. It matches Moxley. You know he can do that. I believe Pack, I guess he's with the group. And then you have Yuta watching it all, and now Yuta's got to make the choice. He's a trios champion with two guys who made sure that Bryan Danielson nearly suffocated to death. Is he with him or is he against him? And now you've given Yuta a little character depth. I've seen multiple people, by the way, just say that Cesaro can't talk. You haven't watched those promos that he has cut recently in the last 6 months. You haven't. It's amazing when people can deliver their own words, how much better and more authentic it sounds. And I'm not saying he's been great forever. But there is a lot of genuine emotion that comes from Claudio Castagnoli that when he's allowed to speak genuinely, it comes out. And look, that's part of wrestling sometimes. You got to deliver the words. You got to deliver the words that sometimes aren't your words. You got to make that your own. Some people have mastered that in WWE. I think that has been relaxed a bit more. There is more understanding. You look at a script, and those are floating around. You go look at a script from 98. Hit these points. Hit this. Okay. The scripts I looked at that I worked off of, not worked off of because it wasn't me, but those promos, they're written. I would hope that has changed in the last 6 months since I've been there. But those are written out. I would get all of Raw and all of SmackDown when I was doing Raw Talk and SmackDown Lowdown. I knew what the shows were going to be. I would get the updated drafts throughout the day. I would get those. I knew everything that was going on. Verbiage written out. Certain people have leeway, of course. Written out. Now, the talent would not get the whole show. They would get their stuff. Hey, here's what you're doing. Hey, here's this part of the script. That doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't come across well. It really doesn't come across well when a 70-plus-year-old man is writing for 30 and 20, 30, and 40-year-olds. It doesn't. And certain people with enough clout can go, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. I can't read this crap. Or I'll take care of it. And certain people had that leeway to do that. And there is a belief. You just ask for forgiveness. Some people can get away with that. Some people get in trouble for that. Not everybody can handle that. Some people need that verbiage. Some people need more direction. They need a writer to help them. Of course they do. If you haven't done this stuff before, you might be a great wrestler. Doesn't mean you know how to act. Doesn't mean you know how to talk. That's why I say if you could do that stuff, you'll pick up the wrestling. If you work at it, you could pick up enough wrestling. It's why Trick Williams was a star from the jump on NXT 2.0. Pixels and thoughts. Let the talent get out into deep waters in a promo and then watch it go poof in their eyes. You can practice. You should be practicing. You should get those opportunities. Promo class, Dusty taught it. Adam Pearce taught it. William Regal. That stuff's so much more important. That's going to make you money. So back to the Claudio point. His words, if you've now traced them, have left you crumbs to what happened. I was more surprised that they went to that level so fast. Like, what did Danielson do to deserve that from Moxley? And that's the heel part of it, right? Double C. Look at Gunther's promos. They're very simple and effective. Most importantly, not overwritten. Claudio could have done that too, but that's not the material he's given. I think Gunther has a lot more leeway under Triple H and trust. And he's gotten better too. The bag spot, as I said, skipped a bunch of steps to get there. Why did Danielson deserve that? Or is that okay? And I understand why people didn't like it. Is that okay because it needed to get across how serious this group is? Does the shock value make you go, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to them? Because to me, now that they have done that, the inside jokey stuff of the Young Bucks as a heel elite faction, like, they can't be rolling their eyes and goofy about bringing gasoline out to set a casket on fire, things like that. Like, you can't be tongue-in-cheek, jokey meta stuff. Because now you have a heel faction that is dangerous. Now you have a faction that is showing what they want to do and what they are capable of. You want grit. You want danger. You want wrestling to not be glossy. You want it to come across as real. There you go. Maybe the bag was on a little bit too long, but they did it. Soul one. This is like a 1 in 20 year spot. So yeah, this group has to be dead serious. That is an excellent point. A lot of stuff, a lot of big stuff happened on one show. Obviously, though, for it to mean something, you can't do it all the time. It's to hammer points home. It's the follow-up. You're going to put a bag on somebody's head. What's next? Now, to that point, I had looked at the schedule and said, all right, Darby's got the title shot at Grand Slam. There's one of your Pacific Northwest dream matches, Darby and Bryan Danielson. Then you go to Wrestle Dream in Washington. There's likely your spot for Danielson Swerve, the rematch, and Swerve wins, and Danielson's career as a full-time wrestler ends. But now, if you believe Swerve's being written off, sure, he could come back for October. But now you've thrown Mox and group into the equation. How does Darby lead into that? I have made the point that I thought Mox was recruiting Darby. And maybe that will continue to be the case. And then Darby rebuffs them. Does Darby... Moxley talking up Darby about playing the game the right way and then seeing who he had with him on Saturday, I think plays into that more. That they want Darby. That they think he fits. Marina Shafir's on board. Pac's on board. Claudio's on board. Yuta's going to probably have to make a choice now. Is Darby next, or will he rebuff them? Will he get taken out and lose his title shot that he won at Royal Rampage? Now the story's a little deeper. Now the Bryan Danielson, when is he going to retire? Story has now gotten deeper and more personal, dangerous, violent. Not about him having dream matches anymore. He'll have some dream matches along the way. But all of a sudden, They just found a way for the AEW World Champion, one of the most accomplished wrestlers of all time, who has made his name on being an underdog. They made him an underdog again. They found a way for Bryan Danielson to have his crowning moment with 50,000 people watching at Wembley Stadium. To have that moment with that emotion where he got to the top of the company, and 2 weeks later, he's going to be back to fighting from underneath as the AEW champion. He is the hunted. There is a target on his back that was drawn by Jon Moxley on Saturday night. It is not easy to make a babyface champion and underdog in such a way, and they have done it. And this is what I've been asking for Cody. Cody needs people to take him down. Cody has needed that kind of adversity. AEW created that kind of adversity for Bryan Danielson in 2 weeks. And I'm not saying somebody needs to put a bag on Cody's head. But he has needed that since the beginning of this of his title reign. Put him in serious danger of losing the title. It hasn't happened. People are still watching him. People are still tuning in. But I don't think he's been put in enough peril. I don't think enough obstacles have been put in his way. Danielson now has obstacles in a very big way. And on top of that, his career is in jeopardy now. Let's see where they go. But there's a lot of ways now. Now there's multiple paths. Moving on to Hangman Swerve. I loved the security around them the whole time. I loved showing them throughout the night with the security around them. Swerve getting ready, Hangman just pacing. Hangman just let me get in there. I don't have to take you through the whole match. You know what happened. Cinder blocks, weaponry, you name it. The intensity they needed to hit, they hit. It was there. People felt it. It was the main event for a reason. They did everything they needed to do. It was brutal. It was as brutal as it needed to be. If you don't know what CZW is and Cage of Death, where they're going to go there, that's what Swerve came up with glass and barbed wire. If you didn't see Swerve in Lucha Underground, the unreal match he had there with AR Fox, he was always capable of it. This was somewhere else for Hangman that he hadn't been before to this level. And he went there. And he was there the whole way. Because he had to be. Because that's where his character took him. Now you get to the end. And you get to the syringe spot and taking out the grill, which I think was more symbolic. Just the idea of putting a syringe in his mouth. And whatever he shot, I don't know. It was just the idea of a needle sticking through there. The shock value was warranted in the match. And then, what do? You blast the chair over his head, which fell into a million, it broke apart immediately. Because it was a work, and that's okay. You hit a guy in the head with a chair like that, and it falls apart. It's as safe as it can be. Believe me. And it worked. Because guess what? They just made a headshot with a chair mean something. Whereas that used to be commonplace. Nope. He blasted him over the head with a chair. Because of the visual of what that did. They even took a wide shot of that too. And this is not about, as I'm seeing in the comments, what happens next. It's not about what happens next. This was the end line. Not every feud goes to this level. Not every feud should go to this level. Hangman's next opponent is not about doing this. He doesn't have that motivation to do that. It's within this story. This is not a once-a-year story. This is not a once-in-every-5-year story. You can't go there that often. And by the way, sometimes feuds, they love to get to this point in any wrestling company, and they don't get there. This has gotten there. This has built. Credit to everybody involved in this one to get it to this level. To take the pro wrestling aspect of it with home invasions and blowing up a house and all that stuff. All of these elements worked. Hangman's character work is so good and so deep and so believable and real. Like, what he has done, as I have said, he is the main character of AEW. He is interesting. And what I loved at the end, goes up the ramp, and he looks. And I thought he was going to walk back. I was just waiting for him to walk back down. And he starts to make the walk. And you hear people scream and shout and are, oh my God, what that? He's going to go back and do nope. And he knew he had done enough. And then he just let out those yells. And I don't know if it was a yell of, and this is interpretation, I'd love to know what you guys think. I don't know if those were yells of pain, anger, relief. It could have been all those things put together. Realization of, oh my God, what have I become? What now? How do I go home to my family and face them? Even though I was doing this because of what Swerve did to my family. I've changed forever. How will they look at me after they see what I did? How will they look at their father? How will they look at their husband? Knowing what he's capable of. Maybe not knowing himself, he was capable of that. And he learned it in front of the world. And when he realized that, after the match was over, and he didn't need to walk back down there, maybe that's what that yell was. That's what that scream was. What have I become? And now that I got that revenge, what is my purpose? I've had such tunnel vision for this man for a year, and I have put him down. But where does that leave me? And that is what makes Hangman interesting going forward. DNC Digital, this is what happens when a teacher is underpaid. That's funny. A former teacher. By the way, DNC, I missed your super chat. You don't have to do it again as a super chat. Can you type in your question from Friday? Because I know I didn't have chat access. I want to make sure I answer it. Just put it in exactly what you had Friday, and I'll answer it. But anyway, really good. And now a lot of intrigue heading into Wednesday night. And we'll see if the ratings will follow it. Quickly here, what a shockwave. I've seen the rumors. I've heard the Fox rumors. You know, WWE's on multiple channels. I was told a few years ago from someone who had been with the company for a very long time, 20 plus years. It's good to be in bed with multiple entities because you just never know how things are going to go. And I think that was said to me about like Becky appearing on some CBS like game show. I was like, oh, CBS. Interesting. Yeah, why not? Obviously, AEW has a great relationship with Warner Brothers. Tony said, 90% I expect the deal to be, I announced the deal. And I'm sure he knows whatever that's going to be. By the way, Dynamite 5-year is coming up in a month. The 5-year anniversary is coming up in a month. They have a great relationship with Warner Brothers. But that's not to say they shouldn't have a relationship elsewhere. And think about it. They have relationships outside of Warner Brothers, outside of the company, outside of the domestic part of this, outside of the U.S. They have that. They have TV deals outside of Warner Brothers. So they should see what else they can get paid for. They should diversify. That goes a long way. All right, DNC, let's answer this question. We can put it up here, Dom. What feud from the 80s or 90s would you like to see get the video promo treatment we see today from the amazing production teams? Ric Flair and Terry Funk comes to mind right away. Ric Flair and Sting comes to mind right away. Flair and Savage going into 8 with the I had those WWF magazines where they like, what do they call, side texted the pictures, and there's some production value there, but like to the level of now, Hogan Savage going into 5 I think would have been good. Hogan Warrior going into 6, like I said, Warrior Savage. Admittedly, I'm not an NWA guy growing up. Yeah, Mega Powers, absolutely. Sean and Brett got a good one going into 12. I remember those workout videos. I remember Sean doing those like handstand push-up things he was doing, but to the level like what exists now. Yeah, Flair Funk, was my first one. That was my first one on the list. I would throw that there right away. Good question, though. And you know what's cool? I have seen the talent that exists in the social media world. People do that stuff now. Andre Hogan. Not at that level, though, Ken. I'm talking about, with the technology and music and everything that's available now. Some really cool stuff could be made, and, that would be a great thing for WWE to look at, honestly. Hey, if this happened today, it would look like this. That'd be a hell of a... There's a freebie. There's a freebie. Give me an epic video package of one we've never seen before. You put that on their WWE Vault page? That's good stuff. Sting, Hogan, Starrcade. DNC, make it happen, man. Let them know. That's a good piece of business there they could do. All right, so we're going to be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about the main points of Monday Night Raw. Bret Hart is in Calgary tonight. We'll see how he gets worked into this whole thing. I would have to think it's with Drew and Punk. Maybe. And coming up this month for members, become a member at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Dom, throw up our tiers if you could very quickly. So I want to show people what they could get and what they could be getting if they become a member. So right above Todd is the base level, $2.99 a month. We'll have another members-only live chat coming up. You're getting those replies to comments, all that, always on the show here. The Matt Camper level, this is where we start to get into the members-only videos. And we're going to be doing some stuff on that this month, including my time starting with WWE, which is 5 years pretty much this month. We're going to talk about how NXT was brought over to USA and how it combated, as we saw, Dynamite's debut, where I was on that day, because the day Dynamite debuted, the Bump debuted, and I went from Stanford to Orlando to be part of that. And we'll pick our retro watch back. So you see it right there, the Private Pass Wrestling Watch Along. If you become a member all the way at that top level at the Matt event, you might get to pick that this month. Nerdy Dude, as we did at the end of August, picked Raw from Berlin leading into WrestleMania 13. What would you like it to be? We will also be doing another 30-minute private Zoom at that level. B. May had that. Our good friend B. May here, who was a Matt event level member, he got that last month. Of course, we'll connect with you on social media. And if you're at the Matt Camper level or higher, we're going to watch a Raw, SmackDown, or Dynamite. Figuring out the date for that, but that's all happening this month. And if you don't want to miss out, become a Matt member right now. Thank you to you guys for being with me here today. Hopefully made sense of some things. Maybe I changed your mind. Maybe you still go, I didn't like what I saw. Whatever it may be, great conversation here today in the chat. Always like having that. And by the way, if you're listening in podcast form on the Believe Network, thank you very much. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you do so. This show is available in podcast form, but if you're at the WrestlingMatchShow.com, you always get it first. So become a member if you're not, and if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you want to listen in audio form, you can. Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. Thanks to our friends at the Believe Network, and your support got us onto a podcast platform. So I thank you for that. If you're here in the chat, please subscribe, rate, and review on your preferred podcast outlet. Become a member here. Leave comments. We'll have a lot more stuff going on this week. Obviously, end of summer last week kind of slowed some things down here. We're going to kick that back up, though, in the coming weeks. And that's going to do it for today. I'm Matt Camp, and I'll be back tomorrow to talk about wrestling even more right here on the Wrestling Mat.